Hello, I am DattatreyaTapkeer. Well, friends, is yoga science or belief? Now, you would say, well, either of the one will be the answer. Some will say yoga is science, it is exact logical science, experimental science, systematic science, verifiable science, like that. Means whatever criteria we talk about science, they can be very easily applied, they would say, and they would say, well, yoga is science. On the other hand, some would say it is belief. Now, what do you mean by belief? Well, perhaps many think that belief is something that has nothing to do with science at all, and then, well, we just believe it. It becomes our set of beliefs. And then, just like we have beliefs in religion, in our traditions, some ancient traditions, like some would say that it is ancient, that again Indian tradition, and that's a belief, something kind of a religion. Is yoga a religion? Can we call that as a religion? Or is it only, as some of the people have thought, that it's a kind of exercise only? Some physical exercises, physical education. So again, putting it into science, clear-cut, objective, verifiable, experimental, logical, everything is just experiments, just physical experiments. At the most, they will add into it pranayam, the science of, as they call it, is the science of breath. So that again becomes science. Well, again, some would say no, sometimes it claims too many things and it goes beyond the limits of science, and then people start believing something which is extraordinary, which is supernormal, which is superhuman, supramental, supernatural, like that. So many things come up into it, and then many misconceptions are arising. And then this question arises, whether it is science or belief. But why do you think we should choose only one? Can't it be both? Can't anything be science and belief both together? Secondly, why do we think that belief will be only negative, belief will be only imaginary, belief will be only non-scientific? Can we think of something as a belief which is based on scientific truths? Can we say that belief itself, we do have to have belief in science itself? So can't we say that there can be something which is as a science, but which has to be believed properly, which needs a right kind of belief, no blind belief at all, so no exaggeration, no overstatements, no imaginary things at all, everything coming into the field of observation, the field of, causation, cause and effect, experimental study, what can be done and how it can be studied, everything measurable, something like medical, something dealing with the body itself, the functions of the body. But once you start studying yoga with the reference to the body, with reference to its anatomy, with reference to its physiology, with reference to the functions of the body, well, it's quite a scientific thing, no doubt. It's just like any other physical science, any other natural science. But why does this belief comes into it? Why does it become the issue of having faith, having belief, having something to take it for granted, having something to believe in? What is exactly yoga? Does it talk only about exercises? Why did this problem arise at all? Is it only a physical discipline? When yoga is becoming so popular everywhere, then is it only becoming the physical discipline in which certain movements and certain postures of my body, and in which some exercises regarding pranayam, regarding the breathing exercises can be done? Is that all? The very word yoga itself, which has come from yuja, to join with, and then the actual yoga philosophy talks about joining of individual soul with the universal soul. Oh, then perhaps the question of belief comes in. then I do have to believe, yeah, there is some supramental, there is some superconscious, there is something like samadhi, because samadhi happens to be the part of yoga. And then we come to know that the too much emphasis given only on physical will be too much emphasis given on only the physical part of it will restrict itself. It will restrict yoga completely. And then we talk about, well, yoga has too many other steps are also there. Yoga does have many steps. It has many angas, it has many bodies of it. And that's why we call it as Ashtanga Yoga, where it starts with yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana and samadhi. Well, when we go to samadhi, how should it be brought into the realm of science then? Then some people say, well, when you talk about samadhi, it goes into the belief. Then what about these steps? Now, asana and pranayama, they are the third and the fourth step. In the first and the second step, yama and niyama, these are different rules of behavior. As if the code of conduct it is. It is very ethical, very moral. A strict discipline is to be followed, which is given by every religion. So when you look into yamas and niyamas, it looks like as if these are very special rules given, and the practitioner, yoga practitioner, has to follow them very sincerely, with total surrender, with total, sense of surrender, sense of belief, sense of faith that comes into it. Well, when you follow all these rules, it seems that they again work in a scientific way. When you follow yama and niyama, it creates the background of your mind and your body to rise to the further steps, to rise to the higher steps of yoga, to asana and pranayama. And then there is pratyahara, and then there is dharana, and then there is concentration is there, meditation is there, and then samadhi is there. This pratyahara is there. You have to withdraw all your sense organs from their respective subject, from their respective functions. You have to bring them within your mind and then go on ahead. So with this concentration, and then you go ahead with meditation and then samadhi. That individual soul merging into the divine soul. Naturally, when this vocabulary is used, individual soul, individual spirit, universal soul, Atma and Paramatma, naturally people would say, well, now there isn't anything like science. They would say it's all a question of faith and belief. So the problem is how to look comprehensively at this entire phenomenon of yoga and what to call it as science or belief. That's the point. Then there are so many interesting things happening over here. That is, yoga can be considered as only the way of maintaining health, youthfulness, energy, power, good functioning of the body. But is it that much only? No. We know that it also gives so many other different, it develops your different faculties, it gives you occult powers. It rises, you can rise above your body consciousness. You get control over so many things. Then all these things they go into the realm of something that is to be imagined, that is to be believed again. Yoga talks about many siddhis. Again the question arises, where to bring those siddhis? Is it only imagination? Different kinds of siddhis, different kinds of powers, different kinds of supernatural powers that are developed by yoga, developed through yoga. Now, how to put them? Where to put them? In science or in belief? So, I think the interest that is created regarding yoga nowadays, we are restricting it only to asana and pranayama and well-being of the health, and that's all. But the real yoga which originated from Patanjali Yoga, Patanjali Sutras, and where all these, as I said, the 8 steps are described. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. Now these steps are there, they are described over there. Now, all these steps have a logical sequence. They have a logical hierarchy. When you begin with science, it has to end up with the science only. Then what belief has to do over here? And whom have I to believe? I will have to believe in the scripture itself, in the matter that is ready, in the literature about yoga, ancient literature about yoga that is ready. I have to believe that first. But will only believe help me? No. then I have to follow it. I have to practice it into my own life. Then it becomes again the practicing science. So don't you think that these two things are intermingled? They are non-separable. You cannot separate them from each other. You cannot say, when you talk about science, it is very exact, it is very systematic, it is very experimental, it is very clear-cut, it is only acceptable. When you talk about belief, then it becomes imaginary, it becomes false, it becomes only exaggerating. It goes into the realm of only, fantasies, psychological fantasies. No. What can be done is, each and everything can be brought into the realm of science. Each and everything can be brought into the experimental science. Each and everything that is described in yoga can be studied from the observation point of view, from the modern scientific point of view. Its results can be verified. Whatever has been told either in Patanjali Sutra and many other different Hatha Yogas and Gherand Samhitas and all other yoga treatises, whatever has been said, may be about Shat Chakras, these 7 chakras inside the body. Now, their correlation with all the chakras, these plexuses, their correlation with the yoga chakras and the correlation with the nervous system, with the neurological studies about the nervous system, that has to be studied properly. Because this becomes the science of consciousness. So, at a particular point, it can be very observable, very objective science. But slowly it turns into something subjective, something psychological, something parapsychological indeed, something going into the spiritual realms. And then the problem arises. When you talk about spirituality, can it be scientific? That has been the quarrel all the time. Is science against spiritualism? I don't know why it's there. Science against spirituality. Science against this Adhyatma Vidya or this Yoga Shastra. And therefore, at one hand, great claims are made without any experimentation. Great claims are made without any logical explanation or justification. Secondly, nobody puts it into practice and sees it. One's own body can be one's own lab. You can try all this with your own self and then try to convey it to others, and then you can communicate it to others. That's the way yoga can be followed. So the so-called popularity of yoga, though it is based only upon the physical discipline in asanas and pranayamas, we never take into account what yama and niyamas are telling us. That background is never ready for any of us. And it's not the only question of belief. That's the issue of both together. In yama and niyamas also, in those ethical conduct, ethical code also, there is something that is scientific and something that depends upon belief, that depends upon faith. Here I don't mean that without, that belief does not mean a blind belief, a superstition. This blind, it is not something like, without verifying it or without observing it, without experiencing it, just like that, you just try to believe it. Well, that's a different thing. What we do mean is here, if yoga is considered as the spiritual path, if it is considered as a yoga, as there is a karma yoga, there is bhakti yoga, there is way of devotion, there is way of action, there is way of where work is worship restored, where there is a way of knowledge, jnana yoga. Similarly, this Raja yoga, this is called Raja yoga, Ashtanga yoga, which becomes the entire process. It's a great journey of individual soul to the universal soul. It becomes the moksha, it becomes the salvation, it becomes the liberation. All these great things which are taught in philosophy and in spiritualism, they are given here. And the ultimate aim of mankind, ultimate aim of human being will be through this yoga ladder. He has to rise up upwards, and while going like this, he might be getting many powers, he might be getting many capacities, he might be getting different experiences, which will be difficult to explain them in terms of normal science, in terms of normal logical sequence. And yet, those experiences will be real for that particular so-called yogi. So now householders cannot become yogi in fact. Everybody is not supposed to go to the mountains or forest and go to Himalayas and start practicing the deeper yoga. But the fact remains that there is something like deeper yoga. There is something like higher yoga. There is something like genuine yoga. There is something like, going to the upper consciousness. There is something really, there has to have something like acquiring these superpowers which yoga has promised to us. So what is needed now as a need of time, that is, all these two things should be coming together. There should be no contrast at all. One thing is sure, that let us be away from superstition, let us be away from blind belief. But at the same time, let's have, Just as we have belief in modern science, just as we have belief in the medical science, can't we have the belief in the yoga science? So can't it be a scientific belief or believable science? You'll find that it's a diplomatic answer, but that's what the case is. Let yoga become a believable science, or let it become scientific belief. A belief based upon science, and yet belief is needed. Belief is needed because at least you will have to believe what others are telling you, what experimentation is telling you. So this, what you call verifiable and justified truths that come out of a research, individual research or massive research or laboratory research or research done in the ashramas, and whatever you do, you do the survey or you do the experiments, whatever is coming out of it, let all this science, let all this treasure, let all this knowledge come out of the scriptures, and let it become the part of our own daily life, and let us find out all those truths and let us give them new interpretation, new meaning to it. Then only the young generation would understand it. Secondly, is belief, it does not mean that it's a belief very restricted one, just as we do have a belief in particular religion. But a real spiritual person doesn't depend upon a restricted or constrained belief in one particular religion or one particular sect. The really spiritual minded person, as he is beyond all religions and he believes in something that is really spiritual, which is beyond all religions. Similarly, yoga has to become a universal science, a universal belief which will go beyond all religions. Well, it might be originated in Hindu religion anyway, but now it should belong to all religions. So other religious people should not think that this belongs to only Hindu and nothing to do with us. Because once you enter into the scientific reality of yoga, it becomes a universal thing. It does not restrict itself to any particular religion. So let yoga become like this, a new discipline which is going beyond, which is transcendental to all religions, which would take use of, which would take help of physical science, medical science, neurological science, psychological science. All these are sciences. Now, even in medicine also we do have something like belief. In all physical sciences there will be something like belief. It depends upon how do you look at it. Do you look at yoga as only science, or do you look at yoga as only belief? Or do you look at yoga as a synthesis of science and belief? And that too, science as a very physical, observable, experimental, justifiable, logical science. And belief also, a right kind of belief, clear-cut belief, which is away from superstition or the blind belief. A belief which is a very right kind of, very wise kind of belief. Believing the principles, believing the experiments, believing what great yogis have said about, and having the sense of surrender. Even in yoga it is said that yoga has given you the option for the concept of God. Yoga itself does not make it compulsory for you to believe in God. But if at all it is needed, it says that Ishvara Pranidhan, you can have a concept like God which will help you to go further. But it talks about Samadhi experience at the end. So, as a conclusion we can say that instead of going into this controversy of whether it is a science or whether it is a belief, let us understand that it is both. It is a synthesis of both. It depends upon our attitude, and we should have a very balanced attitude with a total sense of surrendering, total sense of faith and belief in Sadguru, in the master who teaches us yoga. And at the same time, let us be very logical and very scientific in getting its result, verifying them, putting them into practice, and then making yoga as a real science as well as belief. Well, so my best wishes are there for this kind of synthesis. Thank you.